Welcome, everybody, and thanks for your patience. We're very happy to have you here today. In case you don't know me, I'm Dietrich Stout. I'm the director of the center. I won't do a long introduction, but we exist to promote interdisciplinary dialogue and promote interdisciplinary research here at Emory and within Atlanta more broadly. And one of the things we do is host lunches like this one. We have visiting speakers. We run workshops. I want to point out that we have a certificate program for graduate students, as well as an undergraduate fellows program as well. And if you have any interest in figuring out what those are, I'd encourage you to visit our website, cmbc.emory.edu, I believe. And we also have a library. You'll notice we're recording this. We put everything up, just about everything up on our podcast library, and it's searchable, so you can go find all kinds of cool stuff like this. And so go do that. And if you didn't if you're not on our mailing list, please join. And anywhere you see it says become an affiliate, that basically means join our mailing list. And we've got codes you can scan. Please do that. I'm going to hand it over to Laura Emmery to do the introduction. I want to say, because we're interdisciplinary, I don't know everything interesting that's going on, so we rely on members of our community to come to us with exciting possibilities like this lunch. And Laura's been great to do that, and we really appreciate it. And I'm right here if people have ideas about and knowledge of cool things that we should do. Let me know, and take it away, Laura.
All right. Thank you, Dietz. I'm Laura Emmery. I'm from the Department of Music, and I have been affiliated with CMBC since I first got here in 2018. Putting together really cool events and guest lectures. And today it is my pleasure to introduce Davor Vincze, who was Artist Fellow at Emory during the 2022-23 academic year, which was the program that just started then by the Emory Arts, the Dean of the Arts program. He was our first fellow, so we got to know each other and collaborate. We have worked. Davor is currently he's in residency at Hong Kong Baptist University. He's also a director of Music Biennale Zagreb, one of the largest significant international contemporary music festivals. So last year, we collaborated where in my capacity, I organized what did I organize? A conference, sorry. I'm doing a little bit too many events. Organize a conference, and we are working together for the 2027 season as well. Yeah. And we're going to be collaborating with also Croatia and Serbia for the World Expo. We also worked organizing his two concerts that will take place at Emory. One is tomorrow night with Emory Symphony at 7:30.
I think 7:30, that one, and the one on
Sunday. And then on Sunday, solo artist concert featuring his music. It will be in Performing Arts Center on Sunday at 8 p.m. I hope you can come and see actually what Davor is going to talk today about his process of putting music together. So if you come on Sunday, you can actually hear in practice, not just the theory behind it. I got to be pretty intimately get familiar with Davor's music because his new album that is just coming out next month, which is on Sunday.
It's going to take 3 more weeks.
Is getting released. I wrote liner notes for the program, and it was pretty amazing to just really get to listen and kind of, as Davor says, like, wow, I wasn't thinking about the common threads that you pulled out, but to see where the influences come from, which I don't want to give it away. Davor will be talking about it today. Yeah. His influences and also his use of technology and AI. So we're looking forward to hearing about that today, and hopefully you can come to the concert on Sunday and hear it. So my pleasure to introduce Davor Vincze.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Laura, for this wonderful introduction. Thank you to Dietz, and thank you for the Center of Mind, Brain, and Culture. I actually already, during my time, as Laura said, here at Emory University as Art Fellow, visited, I think, 2 events. You were in a different building, though, or something, if I remember, or maybe my memory's juggled. Yeah. So that was the thing. So today's topic is interdisciplinary artwork in immersive and interactive environments. Before I jump into that, some of you already know me, as is obvious, but I will just go through some biographical details. I was born in Zagreb during a time where, like, very quickly on, like around, before my 10th birthday, there was a war of fall of Yugoslavia, which made me relocate to Germany, and it was like a lot of like reflection later on. I feel like the war did not traumatize me because I was too small to really understand what was going on, but at the same time, it does flow into this kind of like intriguing sense of chaos, and then also like I'm very intrigued in the especially what's happening ever more today, this idea of information, misinformation, and communication. Because, like, if you were to compare, like, Croatian or Serbian or whatever news, you would see, like, for me, it's always like the truth is somewhere in between what everybody's saying, right? And so this kind of like shadowing and kind of the idea, which is now more and more apparent with the misinformation we're getting from a lot of media, social media, AI, content is being auto-generated. It's very fascinating for me from that kind of like early on kind of memory of like, what is the truth actually, right? So because it was not a very favorable time, I kind of thought like, ugh, this whole thing with the arts is not going to be doable. So I actually studied and finished medicine. Then somewhere towards the end, worked 1 year as a doctor in the hospital. And then during those 3 years, last 2 years of my studies, and then 1 year, I was also, to make my life more complicated, studied in Graz, Austria, 150 kilometers away, another studies in musical composition. And I did that for 3 years, and it was a very exhausting thing. But I managed to go through it. I left medicine, and then I studied in Stuttgart my master's in composition, where I started coming in touch with electronics and all of these things, which then, from the perspective of medicine, the kind of idea of algorithms, things like that, started making a lot of sense for me. It was just like kind of like a second nature. So that led me to go to IRCAM, which is a big institute for the research of electronic music and art innovation in music, in Paris. I stayed in Paris for a few years, and then I went to Stanford University, where I did my PhD, followed by the arts residency fellowship here at Emory. And then finally, I have been an artistic director of Music Biennale Zagreb for 2 years now. We've just had a successful edition in 2025 in April, and I will talk about it briefly at the very end. And my postdoctoral fellowship at Hong Kong Baptist University is on the topic of exactly this same thing: immersive, interactive environments. So without further ado, I will then start talking about it. So before we jump into the examples that I would like to present to you, I would like to just briefly go over some concepts of interdisciplinarity, immersion, and interactiveness. So I'm drawing my inspiration, or like idea of the interdisciplinarity. Of course, the word comes from the Latin between disciplines, right? But here I am going to Julie Thompson Klein, whose work on interdisciplinarity talks about these three different categories that are oftentimes kind of used in a very non-systematic way. She's talking about multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity. So this is the book. And so, this is the next one. So these three forms, the first one being the multidisciplinarity, is simply each discipline remains its own proper practice, but it's kind of put in a context, together. For example, we could imagine a concert with some poetry being spoken between the pieces of music. So music is music, poetry is poetry, but they're given in a different kind of context. When we're talking about interdisciplinarity, there comes like more of a kind of a merge between the two. She's mentioning Fluxus, or examples like Bauhaus, where the border between architecture, the design, and visual art is blurred. And then the disciplinary, she's thinking more of a thing where there's also an influence of a completely different discipline, not just the art discipline, where kind of like things start to shape something new. We've probably, or maybe you've encountered wonderful work of arts like Roigi Ikeda, who works a lot with data sets and turns them into visual and musical pieces. Or Olafur Eliasson is very popular. I've seen a wonderful thing in Tate Modern in London, where you enter a room and all of a sudden you're in this haze. And so it's like, at first it's a dark haze, and as you go through, it gets lighter and lighter, and he plays a lot with like lights, reflection of lights, architecture. It's like all kind of fused into one experience, right? So this is where we can't say, oh, this is this discipline or that discipline. It kind of like becomes its own new thing. The part where we talk about immersive, it also comes from Latin immergere, to plunge in, to dive something into something like another medium. So what we think about this is that we are plunging the audience into some kind of a special medium. And here I am taking this, Janet Murray wrote this wonderful book that you see here, Hamlet on the Holodeck, where she is developing this concept of the fourth wall. It's a kind of an interesting concept because it is, she says, like this delineation between the real life and whatever we are trying to present is actually what allows us to suspend the disbelief that what we are experiencing is not real life, and it kind of like lets us kind of security mechanism go so that we can actually enjoy the immersive experience, right? This fourth wall can be like the cart in an amusement park. It can be like when you put the headset on and you go into these immersive video game environments or whatnot. Or for example, also I'm going to be talking about this Envis project that I was working on in Hong Kong Baptist University. Basically, if you can imagine a cylinder which is about 25 feet across and 12 feet high, which is fully LED screen from the inside, including the coating on the doors itself. So when you close the doors, you're fully 360 immersed into this visual environment with like spatial audio, 16 speakers, etc. But even there, we purposefully left a gap for the door where there's a discontinuity in the film, and there's always a person standing there, so that in case you want to leave this immersion, there's like a safety thing where you like know, okay, exit's always there. We can mark the exit, but there's like a gap in the picture for the door so that you know, okay, I can always safely exit this immersive environment, right? And then the final one is the term interactive, from, again, Latin interagere, to act between two things, right? And where things mutually influence each other. I'm calling upon the Robert Rowe's interactive music system, where he's explored various types of interactions. And for him, he says, like, in order to be able to really convey kind of a meaningful interaction, he says, like, it's always nice to have agency, right? So there are systems that can be interactive, but there's no agency of yours. A roulette is a good or any kind of game of chance. You can click on all the buttons, you can, throw your money, lose a lot of money on red on a roulette, but there's no way you're influencing the outcome. What makes a truly interesting interactive systems are the ones where you feel like there's some kind of like agency that you have, where if I do this, there's actually something that changes. So a little bit like, these are just some examples of the fourth wall. I've already anyways talked about these two. And then in terms of interaction, I wanted to bring these two examples. Bandersnatch, you maybe watched on Netflix. There's this very eerie series called Black Mirror. One of the last ones was this Bandersnatch episode, movie with several episodes, where at certain points the movie would freeze like this, and then it was like kind of like blinking, like you could choose either Sugar Puffs or Frosties, accept those or refuse, right? So there were certain moments, and basically most of the scenarios kind of led you to a dead end where the main character died. And then there was like only one where like you kind of like follow the story all the way through, right? So that is an actual agency where if you decide wrongly, quote unquote, then you don't get to hear or see the full story. Ultra Chunk is also another example, very interesting example. This is Jennifer Walsh. This is her partner in crime, Memo Akten. He's a Turkish London-based programmer, and she's a professor at Oxford and a composer. She recorded herself over a course of a year, improvising in front of a camera, and she said she purposefully would record herself in hotel rooms at different spaces, and her hair was always different. So the system called GRAMMA was learning from, which stands for Granular Neural Network, I don't know, something, but it's funny, it's called GRAMMA. So that system is kind of in real time taking the audio signal. It is sort of comparing the sort of a latent space in which it learned, and then is trying to predict what Jennifer is going to do next. But because she's improvising, the system can never really predict it. So what you get is like you get newly generated duet between her and the and the virtual avatar. So you have a full type of interaction that is not pre-recorded or anything, but it's like generated in that moment, right? So the case studies that I'm going to be bringing from my own experiences are the following, which is Freedom Collective, my opera. It's an interdisciplinary music theater. That's what we labeled it. Then there's the manτεία project, which is this transdisciplinary AI-inspired artwork. And then On the Other Earth, which is this immersive cinematic dance project. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about the music biennale. So the Freedom Collective it was... Well, I'm not going to go into the story because it doesn't really matter that much. We received an amazing grant from Germany, and this grant enabled us to make this project with the assignment to kind of question contemporary music theater or opera in 21st century from all aspects of the work. So musical, textual, stage, etc. So for me, I feel like this idea comes, so these are my partners on this project: Alexander Hutkono for libretto, Heinrich Horwitz direction, Rosa Wernicke did all the visuals and video, Magdalena Emmery did costume and stage design. It was premiered in 3 different theaters across Germany. We performed it 10 times, and it was a true pleasure to do this. This is a scene, how it looked like. So basically you had these stage pods where it was a lot between like virtual reality and the reality. The singers were kind of locked into these docking stations, and so behind them you would see these videos. So Rosa, what she did innovatively with the videos, she basically recorded these avatars, like people in certain positions that are very characteristic of what they represent. For example, here you see 2 people kind of snuggling up, and it's like obvious like love moment, and so they're kind of frozen in time, and the video is made through because they scanned them from all sides, so the video consists of camera movement around them. There's actually no movement of the characters themselves. They're kind of frozen in time, but these interactions between them are so symbolic that you immediately realize what's happening. Then in terms of the design of the costumes, it's like all been done as a e-gaming, and then the staging is also normally where you see people here. There are chairs, right? The chairs go all the way to that white line. So we removed the chairs. We only kept the balcony chairs, right? So that there's a sense of real immersion where like these side characters and main characters actually pass through the audience, and there's a kind of a blurring of where does the show begin, and again kind of like the breaking of the fourth wall type of a situation. And in terms of text, Alexander worked a lot with a very simple, short messaging kind of texting type. So it was like actually quite hard to compose because I never had a full sentence. So it was like, hey, okay, and then it's like, yes, success. Who would have guessed? And kind of like, but it's like, but I like this kind of a challenge because like our society tends to go really towards this stupidity to say to a certain degree, and like but still very complex systems arise or are built on these foundations. Like, oh, this will take us to a whole new level. Like everything was like a slogan a bit, So of course, also, talking about where we are. And from a musical perspective, there are 2 innovations that I feel like I did. One of those was this web app which people could follow throughout. So there were certain moments where the audience could take part to make it really interactive. And I'll come back to that. And the other side was just that I conceived the whole opera as like video game levels. So there were 9 movements, and I conceived them really like ice, fire, water, underwater level, whatever you want to call them. There were a lot of references to previous epochs of music in time, and I'm basically saying like this is all an emulation, and they were connected between them with the... Actually, I already talked about all of this. I'm gonna jump to this little video. So this is a video of what you would see normally on your phones at certain times, right? And so everything was connected through this particular sound. A kind of a noisy shaker type of a sound. It's almost like the system is buffering the next level kind of idea behind it, right? So these are the 4 modes of interaction. At the beginning, you could see all of the characters a little bit like their dating profile, and you could kind of scroll and find out more information about them to learn the main characters. Then there were like moments like this. sort of like, so we used the cutout scenes that were not projected on that video wall to use them for the mobile ones, where then several layers were created that all together made the whole audience like a diffused speaker array. So basically, you would get a random number from 1 to 10 assigned, and then you would get one of these 10 things, which all together like created this sound. This is like now a fusion of all of those layers, right? So another fun one was the one where you would get a message like this, and then you were kind of eavesdropping on a private conversation between two main characters. And so these, because it's very pointillistic, and there were 10 ones, then it was kind of like sparse from different parts of the audience. Each of these clicks was jumping, you know, from... and so forth, right? And then the last one showed a kind of a similar, like the depth scene from different angles, and you could tap on the phone and then change those cutout scenes, like the final moment of the thing. So in the interest of time, I'm skipping onwards. So we had these lovely assistants who at the beginning of the thing, you would scan it. One QR code was to connect to the Wi-Fi. The other QR code was to actually connect to the web app. The assistants would explain to you, and then immediately you had these kind of like dating profiles on your phone to get familiarized with the characters. Okay, so now a short excerpt from the opera itself. And so forth. I'm sorry, I'm going to be so brief with all of my presentation, just so we can go through all of it. Where was that slide? Maybe double click? No. What was this? A slideshow button? What was that? How do we go to full screen? Or oh no, there's that. Yes, that is it. Okay, so manτεία is the second project I wanted to work. I worked there in the capacity as a composer, but with also many different artists, but I was not the initiator of the project. The initiators were Roberto Alonso Trio and Peter Nelson. They came with this idea that the manτεία, which is Greek for prophecy or divination, and the way that people didn't understand natural phenomena back in the day sort of comes to the similar point as we do not really understand how the AI is properly really this kind of black box phenomena, understanding how it's computing. So we're looking at it with kind of wondering and awe in a similar way that people would come to, a PTA or Delphi for a piece of advice. So this whole thing premiered in the box, Free Space, West Kowloon, and Hong Kong. And it involved many artists who were working with this different AI environments, or just like technology and stuff. So Joseph Chan created this big clockwork that you're going to see at the very beginning. Samuel Swoop did this smoke installation. So that was like a really phenomenal moment where, like, after first 8 minutes or so, all of a sudden there are these smoke machines and you don't see anything. Like literally you don't see your fingers, and it's like you're really there and wondering what's happening. And then all of a sudden you start to see the screen on the other side, which is tracing the density of the particles, which was very interesting. Karen Yu was the performer. She was this person, a sort of what is the word for the person who's in a temple, like a kind of a interpreter of the holy text of the AI. She was dressed up by Vuzela Cook. Current Cam made this very large AI generated video. Torin was in charge of the whole network integration and video mapping. Lazarus Chan created all of those AI generated text, and I did the entire music for the show, save some minor bits by Samuel Swope. So this is the project. I'll just jump from different sections for you to see a little bit. This is this big clock with 4 handles by Joseph Chan. So you would enter into the space and you heard the sound, and then yeah, parts of it, yeah. It's a mix of tapes and live, yeah. I'll jump a little bit to the point where the smoke comes out, and all of a sudden on the other side, there's this noise and then from that smoke, the prophecy herself, she's coming out with these 2 dancers accompanying her, and she's mounting the plinth. And then when she finally mounts the plinth, she starts interpreting the text, which is generated live, one in Chinese and one in English. Then she gets dressed into this little by little, into this kind of a tree-looking character. Oracle. Yes. And then the kind of divine prophecy comes through the means of this video AI generated, which I'm going to be showing on Sunday.
The struggle to produce meaningful images is evident. Metric smoothies, cut-to-cut montage, world-to-world transitions.
Yeah, and so forth. And then finally, kind of she gets undressed, reads a bit more of that text, and then as she's kind of climbing down the plinth, at some point she kind of loses consciousness and falls to ground, and that's kind of the end of it. Yeah. and then kind of that was a little bit cut off. So yeah, these are the artists that were taking part in that, and it was a real pleasure to work on this project. Okay, I'll move on. We're already 40 minutes in. So just the last project that I am now presenting, I've already talked about this anyway. So on the other Earth, here I didn't work in the really creative capacity. I worked on this post-cinematic choreographic installation by Wayne McGregor. He's a big name in the theater, in the dance world. He's also the director of the Venice Biennale for Dance. And we had the premiere at the Venice Biennale just some months ago. It was co-produced by Hong Kong Ballet, his company, Hong Kong Baptist University. And it was set inside of Geoffrey Shaw. If you don't know Geoffrey Shaw, he's an Australian amazing artist, was 80, still live and kicking, very much super sharp guy who started these immersive environments when he was in his late 30s, and has been doing that. And he created this immersive cylinder that I was mentioning earlier. So it's a 360 cylindrical screen, 12K LED stereoscopic. So you put your goggles on. One is blocking you channel 1, the other one is blocking you to channel 2. Basically, it's constantly projecting 2 channels, and then you get this stereoscopic image where you feel like the dancers are really in the space with you, which is pretty impressive. Unfortunately, it just ended in London last week, but it will be re-given in Hong Kong. Now it was Venice, London, and now it's going to Hong Kong. Yeah. So Wayne McGregor was doing the choreography, Ravi Depres was doing cinematic design, Teresa was doing the visuals. I was collaborating mostly with the Invisible Mountain. They created the sound. Geoffrey Shaw and Sarah Kenderdine did the technology, and I did the sound system integration and the coordination between the syncing between the audio and the video. I'll just show a short Instagram video. It might not. Yeah, now it's like that's the only thing. Oh no, it shows perfect. Okay, this is the thing. So this is from above. Yeah, it's a super short excerpt, unfortunately. I'm sorry about this. This is like, I know, I guess like, they're really sensitive about, they want you to, yeah, now you have to sign up for the other pictures. But I would implore you to explore company Wayne McGregor, and then you'll find more information on that amazing project, which is now coming to Hong Kong, and it's going to be there for like at least 2 months in a space called Tycoon. I think what was super nice about this project is how you see that even though I was working there daily, I came kind of late in the stage, and then I was working for 2-3 weeks in that space, and I've watched the movie countless times because I had to arrange all the sound to move exactly with the characters and stuff like that. It's interesting how like you watch it 10th time and 20th time, and then you're like, oh, I didn't see this person coming out of this corner, because like, I don't know, you're focused on this area. You just never can fully know the whole movie because it's 360, and there's always something happening somewhere that your brain has not properly registered. So finally, going on to the last bit of my talk is there was a thing with these. They have these goggles that are still developing, that's not fully developed. There was an idea of an interaction where there was another sensor type of a thing where you could either create like a little lens on the screen or some kind of like a torch that would project, but it ended up having a little bit of like Bluetooth connecting issues. So Wayne said like, let's cut it. It's the technology is not ready. But this is something that Hong Kong Baptist University with Professor Shaw is currently developing more into to have the means to do more interactivity. And I'm kind of curious where it's going to go from there. So finally, broken relationships. That is the theme of our Music Biennale Zagreb for 2025. We had 3 wonderful ballets where we put we made 2 searches, one for the choreographers, one for the composers, young composers, and we put them together in 3 to make 3 short ballets. Rafał Ryterski and Jacinto did one, Koncic and Clausen Knight did another one, and Veronika Drobnic and Takuya Sumitomo did the third one. This is just like one little shot of we are still editing some videos, so I'm just going to show images. Then we had 3 installations, a very interesting artist, a Croatian artist, Hrvoje Hiršl, who did stuff with lasers, Tina Suralange, who lives on the Arctic Circle area, so she recorded a lot of images from that beautiful, beautiful Norway scenery, and then made a kind of like, it's called The Mother Earth is telling the humanity kind of like a goodbye letter, like sort of like, okay, I'll have to destroy you now. I am sorry, like, you know, I was hoping this relationship is going to be better, but it ended up being strenuous. So, and Nolan wrote this thing with the typewriters, which is kind of interesting because all of the words and everything's AI generated, and so there's a bunch of typewriters, and when you put them all together, all of a sudden you kind of hear the sound of the water. So this is kind of way with his laser installation, and this is this Dear Humanity, where, you know, people are safely tucked in as they're reading the Earth trying to shatter them. And then there's this amazing robotic kind of installation by Nolan Lem. Then we had another great installation in Fuse 3600 by Francisco Umberto and Goran Ježić in this space that used to be a research space in Zagreb for underwater tests. This was used to be a pool, right, where the musicians, so the musicians were kind of inside, here. There was another one there. You don't see them a little bit from the heads of the audiences, but the space is really impressive because it used to be a pool, and this little handle used to kind of like create waves, and they were experimenting, like, you know, the kind of how waves of different speeds collide and stuff like that. And it has been closed for like 20 or something years, and now they're actually renovating and they're going to repurpose it for something new. But we kind of caught the last wave where the space is extremely boomy, and it's just impressive how yeah. And then we had the last concert, Worlds Connect, with Hong Kong New Music Ensemble Vertice from Spain, and the local artist cellist Vidveljak, with 4 new pieces. The last piece by Pilar Miralles was actually this fun. It was kind of the one where she created a sonic tape. And so basically you just press play, you have this like very soft kind of meditative sound, and the musicians pack their instruments, they tuck them in safely, and then take these sacks and wrap them in, and then they sleep for like 7 minutes in front of the audience. And that was like the last piece on the whole festival. It was kind of people really kind of liked it. We tucked the audience also in to bed for the ending of the show. So to conclude, we've seen various versions and iterations of immersion, interaction, and interdisciplinarity. In Freedom Collective, it was a truly interdisciplinary project with multiple disciplines, and also like immersion through this smartphone agency. In manτεία, there was like a multisensory immersion, especially with this fog and all of these things. And then the interaction was more between our artworks. For example, the speed of the movement of the clock was influencing stuff in my musical patch, and vice versa, and stuff like that. On the other Earth is like really this radical immersion, because you're really in this space, especially when you put those goggles on. And if, of course, it looks to a future, this gaze-based interactivity, which is going to be really interesting to explore. And of course, as a Music Biennale Zagreb curator, I was not involved directly into creating any of these pieces, but I was involved in creating the whole ecosystem of like how audience can explore artworks that are immersive, that are interdisciplinary and interactive. So, you know, my thing is there's no fixed recipe. You got to try it out yourself, see what works for you. But I think that it always is a balance between like innovation and expertise. And even Klein says it, like it's kind of like this balance between trying to achieve something new and kind of respecting each discipline on its own, to kind of like not completely lose itself in some kind of technical demands. The interaction for me is a lot about framing agency and consequence. Like, how do you make it interesting that there's like things that get revealed across time, to also kind of more meaningfully immerse yourself, allow yourself also to not be distracted by all of these gadgets and stuff like that, but also really help you to break the fourth wall, immerse yourself even more. In any ways, for me, it's super interesting to work in these environments. I'm super lucky and privileged to be able to work on such outstanding projects on such a large scale, you know, and explore just new ways for the audiences to, you know, lose and find themselves in sound. So thank you so much.
Wow. So these are incredibly complicated projects that take probably years to develop, and then years to put into realization. But I know that you started using technology and AI pretty early on. You said you did it when first actually went to Stuttgart, and also the IRCAM, which was for a while a center where you could even pretty much do this. Could you talk about maybe even some I want to say simpler pieces,
Mhm.
like the one that's coming out on your album, like Me, Myself, AI, which is
Yeah,
a great title.
yeah.
Maybe just a little bit more, like how do you actually incorporate AI? What role does it play in your
Yes.
music, I mean,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
creative process?
I actually, it's interesting that you bring that. I was toying with the idea whether I should do this talk or I have another talk which is called Virtual Voices, where I talk about AI and what I consider to be a voice emerging when working with these systems. And I also wrote a book. I wrote a chapter for a book on performativity after AI. My title was Musicality of Imperfection. So the way that I find it interesting, because there's no teleological point to anything we do in the arts, in the same way that, like, like when I'm using AI, I don't need it to heal the patient. I can have, like, I can include the false results. Like I can, so it's like, that's a very liberating thing. And so for me, what's super interesting is, like, instead of like trying to make AI work better, I like to make it work worse. So I like to push it beyond what it's supposed to be and see at the quirkier results, where the sort of spirit of that the machine comes out from this kind of like not being able. So for example, in these works, what I will do is I will charge it to do. I started working with something which is not fully AI. It's a bit of a machine learning type of a thing, where it's doing this concatenative sound synthesis. So basically what it's doing is you have a repository of sounds, and then you have a sound file. And so you're trying to recreate the sound file from the repository of the file. This whole technique was developed for these automated speech synthesis. So back in the days, if you remember one of those first automats, they used to be very synthetic, right? Because they were like these systems, they were trying to mechanically reproduce the spectral shape of a human voice. So they were not real humans. The concatenative synthesis in the early 2000s introduced this idea of like tokens, words being cut up in syllables. And so you have a person read a text, longer newspaper text or whatever, and then you have a fundus of like all possible sound combinations in your archive. So when you are resynthesizing, the system is quickly reshuffling these things and reorganizing it. And so you get what you get is you get a human voice, which has a warmth, but you get a certain flatness, because what you've recorded or what you've trained your system on was somebody flatly reading a newspaper text or whatever text, right? But then in like 2005 or so, they invented a system that was able to do this musically, where you could kind of like replace not only words with sound, but like any sound with other sound. So here I'm trying to play with like this whole mismatching, right? Where you still get a certain shape. Basically, the system chops up your sound and then replaces it one by one with these bits from the archive. And you can get really weird stuff when you have, for example, a speech as a target, but then you have bird sounds as your archive, right? Then instead of like, oh, hello, my name is Davor, you get and so you start getting this very funny and quirky kind of sounds that so those are some of the examples, like kind of simple examples where you can start working with this technologies, and just like it's about you to sort of curate the process and find what's interesting in it, and then go deeper into that. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody? So do we need to pass the microphone? Yeah, just pass it.
Hi, this was so interesting
Thank
and
you.
captivating and exciting. And thank you for this presentation. I have two questions, mostly about Freedom Collective. Could you say something more about the creative process? Because
The musical creative process or overall?
overall, because I
Okay.
don't know, you said we received a grant, and then you said I got these tiny, okay, well, I don't know, those tiny words for your music. So I did not quite understand
Oh,
how it
no. I
all
mean,
how it all
I had to,
went.
for the whole grant, I had to assemble a team. So I found a grant that was supposed to, yeah.
Yes, I understand. But the creative process, how
Well,
did you
it was
put
going in
all that
stages. Yeah,
together?
it was going in stages. I
Mhm.
think first stage was the librettist and I were working on the. He proposed a theme and a text, and then we decided in the group, like, how many scenes we could have, what should be the overall length. Then when he created and gave me the text, I was going back and forth, instrumentalizing it, vocalizing it, and then the next stage was we had 3 times 3 weeks for the production. So then we would move into the opera house. We would have a plan when our rehearsals were, and I think first work was with the singers to make them. They were practicing with piano. I had to do a so-called piano reduction of the orchestral score. They were rehearsing the singing part separately, and then they were rehearsing what's happening on the scene, movement on the scene, what they're doing at which point, how they're enacting the parts that they have to sing, and the parts where they don't have to sing what they're doing, so they're not just like standing and looking in the space, right? So yeah, little by little it came together, and then the last 6-7 days was when then the orchestra moves in, and then they had solo rehearsals, then they had rehearsals with the singers without movement, and rehearsals with singers with movement, and then dress rehearsal, and that's it. Yeah.
Conceptually, that was some kind of a horizontal collaboration then.
All of you mean who was in charge, or how it was? Yeah, we were trying to make it kind of democratic as much as is possible. Yeah.
And how much is it site specific?
It's very site specific, because the 3 iterations ended up being very different, because the layouts and the sizes of the halls that we got were vastly different. Yeah, the rough idea of eliminating the first row of seats was kind of kept throughout, but it like for in Theater Bremen, we were coming from the backstage kind of a thing, because it was not possible to. Yeah, it was like so there were always a lot of different variations that we had to make, which is why we also kept the scenography so basic with these 4 major pillars, right? They're docking stations with the videos, and told a lot of the story through the videos instead of having a bunch of props, which then would not work.
Thank you. I've got more. But...
Thank you for the questions. Sure.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could talk as an event producer and as an artist. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the kind of scaffolding and competencies that you provide or expect for the audience. I'd love to hear how you think about this. Do you provide program notes or a guide or signage? Do you have talkbacks after the event?
All of the above, but I'll say a little bit.
How do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, different things. For example, for manτεία, we really just wrote a little pamphlet with bare information of what manτεία stands for, what the word means, and that the project is about exploration of AI and technology and arts. And then people came in and they didn't know. And it was a bit like a guided exploration. So instead of having these several artworks each be in a different space in a hypothetical gallery, we threw them in a black box theater and sort of through lights and music guided the audience. Okay, this is now the focus, like, because there was like that sculpture, that moving kinetic sculpture was the only thing that was actually visible in that dark space when you were entering, right? So people immediately like flocked around it, right?
So it's like
then
a
all of
tour guide.
So it was like kind of like acting like a tour guide through lights and music, right? And we had a very complex 14, 4, 10. So there was like 14 speakers on the lower level, 4 big ones in the middle, and then 10 from the ceiling. So it was also like not all speakers were active at all points. So it was like the light and the sound guided you to where the focus is supposed to be. So that once all of a sudden, like on the diametrical side of the space, there's smoke coming out of it and a loud bass sound there. And then all of a sudden the clock noise ends. So like people, of course, started walking there. Then there was a video projection that happened on the other side, and all of a sudden the Karen U with the 2 dancers emerged, and there was this plinth in the middle, and so it was like through these actions you were actually guiding the. That was in that case. In case of the On the Other Earth project, we had a person always give a short introduction, like, okay, these are the goggles, this is how you put them on, this is what you can expect. If at any point you feel nauseous, I'm going to be standing in front of the door, taka, taka, ta. Like, so they gave a little bit of more of a technological explanation, so that also people know how they, you can freely move. There's no safety, there's no seating, you can sit on the floor, that's not a problem. If you get tired, this is a 57-minute show, taka, taka. So each case it's really case by case. Yeah, I would say.
But as far as the interpretive competencies? I mean,
Oh,
you're talking about,
interpretive,
like,
you mean
how
of the
everybody can do
audience?
this.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
and also in
it's
my
like
opera, there were these
artistically.
people who were guiding, explaining to you
Yeah.
how you can scan the QR code. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that it's good. I mean, some people didn't like certain things. Like you would always have a few people which would exit within the first 5 minutes of the thing. Yeah, and it's okay, and it's better. That's better for everyone, honestly. Like if it's not for you, it's not for you, and it's better than like, oh, this show is so boring. Kind of like that. Then you're ruining it for everyone. Just like if it's not for you, in the first 3 minutes you go out. But then the ones that stay, they really get engaged and very curious and have a lot of questions. We had a talk in manτεία. The directors, Peter and Roberto, they gave a talk after the show, after the applause. They stopped and then explained how we came together, thanked everybody who needed to be thanked. And so very different. But usually I get mostly positive reaction. People get really thrilled because it's a type of a thing that you don't get to experience every day. And I think that's the fun of working with it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Maybe we have time maybe for one more question.
Sure.
Okay. Maybe you could tell us. So let's say for Music Biennale, you
Right.
get how many applicants? Like hundreds, I assume people apply, and then you do invitations also.
I mean, it depends. It depends because we are not like people are continuously writing to us proposing programs. So I never. It's hard to keep track. I can tell you how many applicants we get when we open a call. So for certain projects we will do open calls. For others we just like do curation based on Sometimes we will find stuff on the. It's way more amazing art out there than we can do. We do about 30 concerts. We did about 30 events in 2025.
Okay. I remember when I was doing taking care of the conference, I even got applicants who wanted to get the works performed at the Zagreb, so they didn't realize it was a separate thing from. I mean, it was part of the conference, but they wanted their pieces performed at the conference.
At a conference, wow.
But so as an artistic director, so you pick not just like the piece that you like or the artist you like, but it has to fit some kind of overall arch of the telling the story. Because you pick the locations, right? Like that where used to be a water, a swimming pool, whatever it was. So it's got to fit some kind of vision that you have.
Oh yeah. I mean, but it's often artistic vision. I think the process works in the following way. So there are some people that we apply and we're like, oh, I haven't seen that. That looks very interesting, and then we contact them. It's a lot of works we've seen somewhere else or people doing stuff. So we reach out. It's a combination of that. But then usually we draft like a larger idea of what we would like to have, and usually that list contains about 30% more than what we can program. And then we contact the artists and try to find out for the existing work, what is the technological setup, the cost, and for the also upcoming works, what is the idea and process. So then as we get all the info, then the production usually kind of highlights to us, okay, you have like 3 German artists that do headstands and sing, like maybe you could do just one, and so it's like, so yeah. So or that one person can do it 3 times for the same pay, and so that's when the kind of like dialogue and curational process starts. Like, it's not an easy.
I know. So we are looking forward to the 2027 edition.
Yeah, that's going to be in April 10 to 18. April of 2027.
Well, if you come on Saturday, you will hear Davor's orchestral piece that's actually getting released by Deutsche Grammophon soon. Also this year. This year. And then if you come on Sunday, his solo artist concert, you will hear some of the
things that we presented
today.
Except from manτεία and another 2 projects. One with the interactive smartphone.
Yeah, so it'll be pretty cool. So those are, it's I think the description is for ensemble and interactive audience.
It's tape and audience interaction.
Yes. So we play a part in creating this piece. So hope to see you there this weekend. It's at a performing arts studio, part of the music department of BRB. And it's on the website everywhere. And thank you, Davor. Thank you, CMBC, for hosting us and sponsoring the event. If there are no other questions, then that's that.
And then lunch. Right?
Or lunch. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.